Ooh, this is exotic. Muscle Cat Media. Nice. Cultural.
Well, welcome back to Baseball Expats for another week of baseball. The boys are all back together. Eric is joining us off of a trip to the Australian Women's Championship. Spoon's fired up about something. We're going to find out what it is, but something has definitely there's a bee in his bonnet of some sort. And the Blue Jays ride the bus. There's plenty to talk about on today's episode of the Baseball Expats. But Eric, first we'll say hello to you. Good to have you back. How was the Australian Women's Championship?
Yeah, it was awesome, man. It's nice to be in like a baseball bubble, as you know, where it's just like you wake up and it's like 15 hours of baseball all day, and you're around a bunch of people who are leaving their full-time jobs and families and kids and husbands and everything on there too, and they're just baseball players. So it's like you're in a cool baseball bubble. There was 10 players who in this tournament who are drafted to WPBL teams, including one Emi Saiki, this Japanese girl at third base. Unbelievable, like highlight reel after highlight reel. So it made me pretty excited to see what that league can be. I think it's got some potential. So hopefully the powers that be that are running that league can make it work. But as you and I know, a 4-team league is just not exciting, right, Rolsey?
Well, that's what the naysayers would have you believe anyways. But
I loved the ABL this year, to be
I think
honest.
if we learned anything about a 4-team league in the ABL last year, it's that it can be very exciting. I want to come back and touch on that to see whether or not you think this women's professional league is actually going to take off this year, because there is a lot of conjecture about that. But we'll bring Spoon in. I mentioned it there at the top, Spoon. Did you see this story about this mechanical failure leaving Phoenix, where the Blue Jays had to ride the bus to Anaheim?
I did not. I thought you were speaking metaphorically.
It's a thing that actually happened. So apparently, after the Blue Jays played your Arizona Diamondbacks, I believe it was yesterday was the final game of that series, there was a mechanical failure on the plane, so the Jays couldn't fly to Anaheim. And John Schneider just held a team vote. And I think everybody except for Max Scherzer was happy to just take 3 buses to Anaheim. And then now Schneider's joking that kangaroo court's being held every day and he doesn't get any sort of vote, and Scherzer's in charge and all sorts of stuff. But look, it's nice to know that sort of Northwoods League style that even major leaguers can take the bus sometimes.
I like it.
5 hours and 28 minutes. I wouldn't have thought.
Wow, poor guys. It's less than a trip from Adelaide to Melbourne.
Adelaide.
I wouldn't have thought that it. Yeah, I wouldn't have thought that it takes that long to drive from Phoenix to Anaheim. Eric, just before we do move on from that, I mean, I'm interested to get your take. I mean, you've been around the women's game now for a week and a half as part of that Australian Women's Championship. What is kind of the overall sentiment about whether or not that league's going to go ahead? Because there has been so much conjecture. Like, if you remember back to when the draft was happening, it was national news. It was on the Today Show and Sunrise and all sorts of stuff all over the world, where it was a big deal. But it just seems like there's been a little bit of radio silence in that league since all of those announcements happened. I know that there's a lot of administrators in the game throughout the world that are worried about it. There's players that have been drafted that are worried about it. What's sort of the story about where that league is at?
Well, a couple things, both red flags and green flags. So the first one I know is that one of the issues was scheduling, right? I think it was originally supposed to be in July, but it's a Women's World Cup year. Now they've set the date for the beginning of August is when this league is going to launch. So there's still plenty of time to generate some hype, and it will be off the back of the Women's World Cup Group A in Rockford, Illinois. So that's a positive. Number 2 is that players have been offered contracts now. So the players that have been drafted, I was talking to a few of them this week. They've been literally given a piece of paper that says, sign this deal. You are a pro baseball player. Here's the terms. We'll fly you over, set you up, and do like this. So it's happening. The strange thing here is they held this draft, but apparently not every player. This is just what I'm told. Again, hearsay. I'm not an official source. I guess I am, because sources told me. But apparently, even if you get drafted, it's not a guarantee that you get a contract, which is the most bizarre concept for a league that's just launching. Why hold this draft? Why tell the players? Why tease the players? Why pick them if they're actually not going to play in the league? I thought that was the whole point. So that's a bit of a strange one. But Yeah, I mean, I've even got emails in my capacity about some of the Australian players. Like they're looking for media recommendations, highlights, sources. I have to record a video for one of the players telling them about how she got her nickname, which I coined, by the way. Thank you very much. The business, Molly Pattison. So it is going to be happening, but you're right. I think they're still kind of figuring out what it's going to be, travel logistics, everything in between. But I'm very curious just to follow along and see how this transpires. But that was the weird one to me, is that why would you hold a draft and then not offer every player that was in the draft a contract, while some players who weren't drafted are getting offered? Like, just strange, right?
It's the business a pitcher, because I feel like if you have that nickname, you should be a pitcher.
The business? No, the business is not a pitcher. You're right. It would make sense, but she is a hitter. She's a center fielder. But if you just watch her play, she's all business, like all business in the batter's box. And I think it kind of gets the nickname because, like, you know, she was on a very young team a couple years ago, still is now. And like women's baseball, there's a lot more, I guess there's a lot more like cheering than there would be like in men's baseball, you know, from the dugout yelling, you know, even music and songs before the game. It's actually quite a nice vibe. But she was just like straight-faced, poker-faced, part of none of it, in the batter's box, all business, stares you down, then doubles down the gap, stands on second base. Her celebrations were very much like business-like attitude. So she just became the business, and that was a nickname coined to her when she was 17. Now everyone calls her the business.
I like it.
It just, I mean, we've dealt with something like this in Australia recently. It's a lot different, but it just has kind of rugby 360 vibes for me at the moment, where it just feels like, and again, it's different because you don't have players defecting necessarily to go play in this league. I mean, I don't think there were a lot of Japanese players that were taking in this women's pro baseball league, or maybe there was. Maybe you can correct me on that, Eric. I know that there were some, but it's not as though they were all defecting to go play in this league, and I don't think that they even share a season, so it wouldn't necessarily matter.
Well, they do share a season.
There.
They do share.
Oh, right,
a season,
okay.
yeah.
So, but to me, I mean, and obviously, it's not at the scale of what a lot of these rugby league players and, you know, some rugby players around the world were being promised. I mean, you see a guy like Zach Lomax, for instance, that leaves his team contract, ends up not getting a contract for a team, and then it's just kind of hanging in balance for months or weeks and months before he finally, signs a much lower deal for a rugby union club here in Australia. So it just, maybe that's why I feel a little bit of trepidation, because it's like we've seen this happen in a separate code very recently, and when there's not a lot of details coming out about a season that's meant to start in less than 6 months, it's like, is this actually going to happen? I would love to see it happen. I mean, I would be a huge fan of this league, but it just feels like the closer we get to what is meant to be opening day, and I mean, they're still putting posts and things out about countdown to opening day and camps that they're doing with big league clubs and all these other things. But the fact that we just don't have any other details, to me, says that I don't necessarily know that I trust it's going to happen.
Yeah, I understand all those fears. I think a version of the league will happen, right? Like, I don't know if it's going to be what they set out, but I don't see how that doesn't happen from everything that I've heard and some contracts that are on there. So it feels like it's going ahead. I don't know if it's going to be the same kind of idea. I think people are discovering it's very tricky to run a professional league. And especially when you're dealing with a lot of players that have not necessarily been professional athletes before, right? Like, obviously they take their sport very seriously. But there's a big difference in that. And Spoon, I think we saw that a lot with the AFLW here. And that was something that I think you have to really commend the Adelaide Crows on, their strategy when the AFLW came around. Like, women have been playing footy for decades and decades in Australia, right? So there wasn't a shortage of women who played footy here. But what the Crows did in their first couple years is they decided, you know what? We're not going to draft footy players. We're going to draft athletes. So they went after Olympic basketballers, Aaron Phillips obviously being the number one. They went over Irish hurlers. They went after rugby players. They went after a couple soccer players. They went after players who had been paid to play a sport or had been Olympic athletes and knew what it took to be an athlete, because there's a big difference between just showing up every Saturday and playing club footy than there is now all of a sudden getting paid for it to be your full-time job and the training regimen in there. And they said, you know what? It's easier to make athletes footy players than it is footy players into athletes. That's changed now because the pathway has been established. So like these girls that were 13 years old have now watched the AFLW for 10 years and now are 23 and dominating because they prepped it. But I think you're going to see probably a similar sort of thing when it comes to the players you want to pick. You want to make sure that they're athletes first and foremost. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, part of the problem with the AFLW, though, is they went from like 4 teams to 6 teams to then this pressure of we need a team for every single men's team. And there's an argument that there's not enough talent in the men's competition to have 18 teams, let alone talk.
There isn't enough talent in the men's competition.
I mean, you look at the bottom
18
5, 6
teams.
performers on every team every weekend, and it's kind of like, yeah. And then to do that on a women's scale, I think was just extremely ambitious. They probably should have stuck with 6 teams for different states and gone that way. So I guess there's a middle ground between what you're talking about with a 4-team competition and going way too far the other way and diluting the talent pool.
Yeah, I think the 4 teams is good because like the player lists that are on the WPBL are like legit players, and a lot of them do play in leagues around the clock, right? Like the Japan League, the Quebec League, the BC League. Some of them are playing banana ball. So I'm really excited just to see how it transpires. It's a different game, the women's game, than it is to the men's game, right? I mean, the hardest throwing player in the World Cup finals in the women's game in 2024 threw 75 miles per hour in that tournament, right? Like it's a completely different game in terms of the strategy and getting players on base and moving it around. I mean, there were 8 homers on the main field at Altona, which is a pretty good crack, actually, Rolsey, if you consider that tournament. Like, that's way more than what we see on a full field at the under 18s, for instance. So there is a bit of power in there, but it's kind of limited to a few players. So it's really interesting to see the run game in particular and how teams communicate defensively to try to shut down and limit damage on the base pass where there's a lot of opportunity. So it was kind of a fun style of baseball to watch because it wasn't strikeout, velo, power. It was very much contact, defense, balls in play. And the pitcher that won the pitcher of the tournament at the AWCs, she threw 14 innings, allowed 2 earned runs, didn't walk a batter the whole week, but allowed like 19 hits, no walks, and struck out 2, right? Like that was the best pitcher. She was awesome. She had 4 different pitches, mixed them up with speeds, just trusted the defense behind her, and that ended up being a winning strategy. So I kind of liked that nature of watching that style of baseball too, especially when I'm used to a world where I'm watching guys that are 95 miles per hour on the reg, you know?
Yeah, look, I mean, you're not right. It's a different sport to watch, but for a lot of reasons, it's a lot more intriguing. I know that even the World Baseball Softball Confederation has tinkered with changing the dimensions of a women's baseball World Cup, and there's been a lot of pushback for that because of the fact that it's not easy to replicate, I guess, worldwide is the main reason. You'd have essentially players playing on a diamond that's not the same dimensions as what they're used to playing on day to day. But also, you're right. I mean, it does create the theater of what competitive women's baseball looks like.
I have 2 thoughts on that. One, I actually don't love the fences going in because I think it takes away outfield play. Like I think that's some of the most exciting part of the game. There's 2 schools of thought, and I tend to think that if you can invest in the women's game and raise the standard, the big issue is walks, right? Like if you take a look at the World Cups, if you take a look at some of the women's competitions here, the walks are higher than what you do have in the men's game, right? And a good baseball game is played when there's a lot of strikes thrown, because when strikes are thrown, balls are hit or strikeouts are made, right? Like free bases. I mean, so we've watched some ugly ABL games, and that's men's, Rolsey, where you and I have called games, and it's like, well, the Sydney Blue Sox have walked their 7th batter of the inning, and you're like, what are we doing here? It's not entertaining at all. So I think a good baseball brand is one where strikes are being thrown. And I was talking to one former national team player, and she proposed the idea of, hey, there are leagues around the world that are tinkering with a smaller ball, not dramatically smaller, like not enough to really impact things. But what it does is mean you can grip the seams of the ball a lot easier. And I had one player who was, she's 16 years old. She's one of the best. She's the best in South Australia. She was talking to me about how she's being taught by a pitching coach here, but she's having trouble getting her hands in position on the ball to really make that ball break. And it makes sense, right? She's got smaller hands than, a 6'2" man would have who is throwing it. So I'd be interested to see a whole tournament, some data, not a nationals, not a World Cup, something separate, maybe a pro league like a WPBL, just to get some data and experiment what it could look like if you tinkered with small things like a smaller ball, whatever it does to get strikes. But at the end of the day, I think if you get investment in girls baseball at the youth, and then investment at the under 21 level, and then investment at the senior level, you're going to get better baseball players, which means because everyone's being neglected for softball, right? Like, you're going to get better players and you're going to get more strikes thrown. And as soon as strikes are thrown, you have a great game of baseball.
Yeah, and I mean, the WBSC did that at the under 12s. It took a while for that tournament to basically become dimensions that no one's ever seen. And that World Cup is played at, I think, 75-foot bases, which are played nowhere else in the world. But you get to see bang-bang plays. You get to see kids that are throwing hard. You get to see impressive breaking stuff. You get to see home runs. So look, you're right. I think if there is a national and sort of international stage where some of these rules can be tinkered with, I think the women's game certainly will take off. But look, I mean, that's certainly something we'll keep an eye on. I am excited to see that WPBL roll out. But look, I think 3 guys mansplaining women's baseball for 15 minutes, we can probably move on from that. Speaking of mansplaining, something's on Spoon's mind. I don't know what it is, but something's bothering him. I can tell him. I can tell by looking at you. What is it, Spoon?
Well, just before I do that, this is the earliest I think we've ever recorded a show. So we're never normally recording when games are played. I think it's crazy. 10 days ago or so when we last spoke, maybe 2 weeks, Xander Bogaerts hit a grand slam, and it was one of those games where I cashed in on an over where it was 1-1 after regulation. The same thing is just finished in Kansas City. The Royals led 1-0 after 2 innings, and then there was not another run till the top of the 9th when the Orioles tied the game. They ended up playing 12 innings, and the Orioles won 7-5. Like, again, there's a guy out there in New York who stayed up all night to watch his under 8.5 lose in the 12th inning because, who was it? Leody Taveras hit a grand slam. I think it's crazy. Anyway, what's really upsetting me, maybe more than it should, I don't know if you guys saw a couple of days ago, the Dodgers lost to the Rockies, which alone is a headline. They did it again yesterday too. But the crazy thing that came out of that is rookie catcher Dalton Rushing coming out and saying, yeah, something was a bit fishy there. They were jumping all over our first pitches. Yeah, a bit fishy. That's got to be one of the most out of touch comments I've seen, just tone deaf. Like, your team is meant to win 120 games anyway, firstly. Secondly, if the Rockies were cheating, they wouldn't be the Rockies. So I don't understand that implication about fishiness. And thirdly, going up there and hacking first pitch is a pretty common approach from a lot of teams, especially teams that are not meant to beat the other team because they're going up against like the Avengers of pitching. I don't really understand the point of that comment in any way.
Did you go back and look at the pitches themselves? Like, Dave Roberts came out and sort of poo-pooed this straight away and was like, I don't know what he's talking about. Like, if you go back and look at the pitches that Rushing is actually talking about, they're all like center cut rubbish deliveries. And Dave Roberts is like, well, dude, what are you talking about? Like, they just weren't good pitches. So you're right. I think tone deaf is the right way of putting it. Sorry, Eric.
Did you see the Colorado Rockies reporter or in-game host or whoever it was that was just like, these comments are pretty rich from a guy who is barely played above AAA. Like, what? This guy gets called up from the minors and all of a sudden is like making comments like this about, guys that have played in the big leagues for 10 years on the and they're back-to-back World Series champions. And yeah,
there's like half of baseball swings first pitches. Like, are you telling me Javi Baez is cheating because he thinks he's got to tell on like the 100 different pitches he sees every year? Or is it just that he's never seen a pitch he doesn't like?
It's good fodder though, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I like seeing.
Also, who accuses the Rockies of cheating?
Yeah. Are we implying that they'd be 30 losses worse if they weren't somehow using some kind of video relay to tell what pitch was coming? Like, come on, Dalton Rushing.
Have you ever heard the story about the time that Boog Sciambi and Chipper Jones were like having a beer on an off day, and Boog Sciambi was telling him how, like, this is like in the very early days of sabermetrics, like when Boog was still the play-by-play guy for the Braves, and he had this like deep conversation with Chipper Jones that he just talked about, like his swing rate on first pitch was like 80%. And Boog was like, you're only getting 30% strikes on first pitches. And they had this long conversation over a beer on an off day. And the very next day, Chipper takes strike one on a 91 mile an hour fastball right over the middle of the plate. And he stops, puts his bat down, and looks back up at the broadcast booth at Boog Sciambi with the angriest look that you can imagine. And for like 6 or 7 years, that screenshot from that broadcast was Boog Sciambi's Twitter profile photo.
Brilliant.
How good is baseball? Well, look, as long as we're talking about throwing strikes, we might as well talk a little bit about Mason Miller and what he's been doing. You said it may be tongue-in-cheek, maybe not the other day, Spoon, but if he keeps doing this, can he win the Cy Young?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the problem is the Padres have to keep getting in save situations, right? And I spoke last week about how they've had a pretty soft schedule to start the year. I don't know when they start to play their division games against the Dodgers, the D-backs, how often they're going to be in those situations. I mean, I'm not discrediting San Diego. I think the team's been really good. But I think it's also rare to see, I mean, what's he had? 7 save opportunities in 18 games or something like that? Like, is that level of necessity going to be there for him to even get the innings to even have that conversation? I'm not sure. I do know if we ever going to see someone do what Rolsey did last year and fail spectacularly by taking a closer in Destiny Draft again, we might be seeing Mason Miller, because he's guaranteeing you 5 points on strikeouts and 0 negative on earned runs. So what's this space?
Well, I guess the age-old question is being like, what happens if you got a guy who can throw straight gas and only throw straight gas and throw it for a strike? Because the most amazing part to me was that, what was it? He faced, of his first 30 batters that he faced, he had thrown 31 balls. 31. 30 batters, 31 balls. 1 ball per batter thrown. Like, it is... Of course he can win the Cy Young if he keeps doing that. Like, it was insane, right? Like, and now I think he's up to 42 balls on the year after today, but he's got 27 strikeouts in those last couple outings. So, like, his ratio has gone up in the batters to face, and it's still about 1.
Did you guys see there was a first pitch Vaughn Grissom saw yesterday for the Angels? He ducked out of the way thinking it was 103 up and in, and it was a slider at 92 that clipped the top of the zone. Like, there's got to be nothing more embarrassing as a big league hitter. I mean, I do it on Saturday mornings, but I'm me. Than ducking out of the way of a breaking pitch that you think is going to hit you, and it comes all the way back and breaks glove side for a strike.
He's going to win it.
Wonder what he's paying right now to win
We
the Cy Young.
were talking.
He's got to be.
We were
51.
talking about this just sort of on our chat group earlier today. He has a FIP in excess of -1, which has effectively broken the metric, right? His fielding independent pitching is in the negative, which means that he's expected to allow negative runs. Like, there's never been a pitcher that has had an amount of, I think I went back and looked at this. I think K-Rod in 2002 is the only pitcher to ever end the season with negative FIP, and it's because he got hurt and only threw like 5 2/3 innings. So he's effectively broken a metric that a lot of people use and tend to use. I mean, I know, Eric, you probably rate it higher than you do ERA for a lot of different reasons, but I don't know that I've ever seen a number that was that outrageous. Just going and looking at his numbers, it effectively means that of the 3 true outcomes, only 1 is ever going to happen, and he's expected to allow negative runs.
It's insane. It's pretty fun to watch. What a trade that was.
Well, we'll see, though. I mean, DeVries looks like he's raking, and you've got to figure that the A's are going to call him up at some point. I mean, 27-year-old closer for the best prospect in baseball. Like, right now, the Padres are laughing, but we'll wait and see.
They got to win a World Series. But, yeah, what is it? His actual whip is now 0.35.
When we record this show in 2031 and DeVries wins an MVP, we can talk more.
He walked a guy yesterday, and it was like the sky was falling.
I mean, he does have that kind of profile where you think that if he's going to have a bad start or a bad outing, it's going to be an absolute disaster, right? Like, he's not like an Edwin Diaz where he kind of walks the bases loaded and then gets out of it with 3 strikeouts after that. Like, I feel like we're going to see a meltdown at some point, probably, just because baseball is baseball, and it's going to be like 6 earned runs.
Yeah, I tend to think that it'll be more free bases, walks, hit by pitches more so than it will be, because he's just so disgusting. Like, his changeup's 96 miles an hour, so it's like he's unhittable as long as he can throw strikes and mix his pitches well. Like, I mean, and you're right. It's almost whenever he gets erratic, is when he's going to have those issues. So you're right. Maybe he walks the bases loaded and tries to take something off the fastball or take something off the changeup, and that's when he gets in trouble. But look, we haven't seen it yet. And I've also sort of said it tongue-in-cheek to you guys, but one guy that I do want to sort of give some kudos to is Riley O'Brien of the Cardinals, who was not expected to be the Cardinals closer. And like, if you look up his numbers, the strikeout numbers are nowhere near where Miller's are because Miller's are cartoon-like. But I mean, his K per 9 is still 11. I mean, he has 6 saves. His whip is 0.41. I mean, the Cardinals signed Ryan Stanek essentially to be their closer. He loaded the bases on opening day, and Ollie Marmol was like, probably need to do something else here. What Riley O'Brien's been able to do at the back end of games for St. Louis, a young team that's going to play in a lot of close games, the fact that he's been so lights out for them is not a piece that I expected the Cardinals to have. And when you take that into the equation, a young team playing in a lot of close games, if he continues to pitch the way that he has, again, a piece that I hadn't even really considered, but in watching them so closely, it's almost like that gives them, it has to give them a higher percentage chance of being a legitimate playoff team if they continue to play well.
Must be nice.
Well, the rest of the Cardinals bullpen, not so good. I read a stat earlier today that said the Cardinals bullpen has given up twice as many walks as the Cardinals starting rotation. So that probably tells you everything you need to know about the rest of the Cardinals pitching staff. Well, those that might be new to the podcast this year, last year we did a few things, some we probably shouldn't repeat. But one of our favorite segments on this show is where Spoon gets an idea in his head of a theme team, which is essentially, it can be. Sometimes they're good. Oftentimes we like him to run them by us before we do them live on the podcast. But look, we're riding by the seat of our pants on this Tuesday afternoon. It's a theme team where Spoon essentially gives us a theme and we try and build the best team on the park that we can. I'd love to say that it's structured and that there's rules involved, but there's really not. But Spoon, you said you've got an idea. You often say you don't know if we'll be able to field a team, and then once we do, it's full of all-stars. So what have you got for us?
What were some of the really good ones first, just to recap people from last year? I mean, we did the all-noun team, which was hilarious and ended up being really good. The switch hitting team was unbelievable.
I believe there was one with players whose names had to end with Z.
Yeah. That ended up being a really good.
And that ended up being good too, because all Latino players.
Yeah. Okay, this one we're going to do over 3 episodes, and we're going to build 3 alphabet dream teams. So we're going to do A to J. Does that sound right? No. I is the 9th letter. A to I.
This is what I meant when I said it's not staged.
A to I surnames.
Surname, not first name.
Yeah. And we're going to try and build the best A to I, so the first third of the alphabet. Then we're going to do the middle third, and we're going to do the third, and we're going to rank those 3 teams at the end based on where we go. So I was thinking originally we would try to go around the horn, and then I was driving to work this morning, and I couldn't think of a single catcher that starts with the surname. Starts with the letter A. So maybe we just need to go with A to I, and we can shuffle around as we need to. If we can see an upgrade in one letter at a certain position, then we can trade them out.
Wait, did you say you can't think of a surname that starts with A?
For a catcher.
Oh, for a catcher. Oh, yeah. So we need...
So scrap going around the horn. Let's just build it. And then we can tweak as we've done in the past and push guys around accordingly.
So throw out some names, basically.
Yeah, well, I'll write them down as we go. If we can get a couple of names.
I think let's do this almost like we do Destiny Draft. It doesn't have to be Snake, but why don't we just roll through and each of us can pick a guy?
Yeah, everybody just say a player. We can assign him a position and it can move, right? Because a few will go pretty quickly, I think.
Yeah.
Let's go around and give 3 each, and then we've got 9, and then we can evaluate where we're at. Because I feel like then we'll have the top 10 guys, and then from there, we can round it out because we'll miss someone. Remember, I think we missed Bryce Harper in the noun name because, it was a harp.
I'll start.
Speaking of Bryce Harper, I think that falls within the
the H.
Who wants to start?
Well, I just said Bryce Harper, so I think I've started.
Rolsey, you can start because your name's Andrew, and again, I'm blanking on anyone with the.
My last name is Molnar. His last name is Reynolds. Your last name is Columbus. Done. It literally falls in the ratio. He is actually the only guy that doesn't fit this team. You couldn't play on this team, Rolsey.
This is not the only team I couldn't play on. Don't worry about that.
But Rolsey, start us off.
Well, I'm going to go with Vladimir Guerrero Jr. He'll play first base for us.
Okay, let's take. Well, this is off to a great start, isn't it? We just miss out on Aaron Judge. We just miss out on Ohtani. I feel like the middle third is going to be really weak. Sorry, the middle third is going to be really
just
strong.
miss out on Ohtani.
Yeah, just miss on Ohtani.
All
right, let's go.
Just.
Are all of these names going to be like all the really good players in the middle third of the alphabet? This is like elite groundbreaking baseball chat, by the way.
I feel like Spoon's using some sort of Swahili alphabet.
What about Jose Altuve at second? I'll just keep going.
Give me Yordan Alvarez, my guy with 10 home runs already, who's going to win the AL MVP. He's going to be at DH.
What about Pete Alonso?
He's had an awful start to his life in Baltimore.
So he's out.
I want Yordan at DH.
All right. Well, at second, let's go Jose Altuve.
Are we just going to try and do all A's, or are we going to try and do 3 per letter and then mix and match?
I thought you said it was just between A and I.
Yeah, but we've got Alvarez. We've got to use 1 for each. 1 position per letter.
1 position per letter?
Yeah, that's why we might get some tough situations where we have to upgrade a guy and downgrade a guy if they both share the same letter.
Okay, well then let's go with the one at catcher, because I think that's going to be the hard one to do, right? So like we can just find our catcher and work out there. So what about Wilson Contreras?
Mm-hmm. Can we beat
take
him?
Wilson over William?
I'm trying to think of other catchers who could even be in the conversation.
Yeah, you probably want William Contreras, not Wilson.
I mean, it's a conversation for sure.
Didn't they make him not a catcher anymore? Or is he a catcher again?
Well, Wilson is a first baseman.
Well, where does Bo Bichette fit in here?
Barely even with the New York Mets.
He'll be fine. Mookie Betts? Is he RB?
Mookie Betts, probably our second base. You're right, though. I'd rather get catcher locked down.
I mean, Ivan Herrera could be our catcher. He catches once a week. Raking.
Gee, if Ivan Herrera is our catcher in any of the 9 letters, I don't like how this team's gonna turn out in the end. There's got to be some really obvious catchers we're missing, right?
I don't think so. Let's just keep rolling. Look,
what about Drake? Drake Baldwin should be our catcher. Rookie of the year last year.
I would say
hitting over 300 to start the season for the Braves. They look red hot. If Drake Baldwin's our catcher and we can fill the rest of the team without using the B, I think that's a good way to play it.
Well, but then you're limiting Bichette and Betts.
We can find good middle infielders. We can't find a catcher. That seems to be where we're at, because we were just discussing if Ivan Herrera, the backup catcher, should be our catcher. I think I'll take.
But Contreras is pretty good.
Give me Drake Baldwin. We'll put them both down and we'll see how it fits out. All right.
All right.
Surely Corbin's got to play right field for us, right?
I would love that. That would make me very happy if you guys would allow it.
Corbin.
So we've used A, B, and C. D.
Diaz?
Dylan Dingler?
What about Diaz?
Which Diaz? There's 7 of them.
The closing one.
We're doing 9 letters, 9 positions.
Well, what about our pitching?
Pitching will be A, B, C, D.
Can Yordan play in the field
Yeah, he's played a lot of left.
Can Rafi Devers be the DH?
Oh, yeah. Rafi Devers could be a good one.
I like Devers. He can play first anyway. It's not that hard.
Well, we've got Vlad there.
Well, what about Acuna as our center fielder?
Oh, do we want to lose Alvarez's bat?
Do we want to lose Acuna?
No, I don't want to lose either, guys. But I mean, Alvarez, if we're doing it on this season alone, Alvarez is the MVP right now. He's got an OBP of like 500. What about E?
That's a tricky one. Edwin Encarnacion, can we bring him back?
Can't think of many
Bring him
E's at
back.
all.
Tommy Edman.
Yeah. Well, it's
TK?
the best name until we find a better name, so I guess I'll write it down.
No, Hernandez is not.
E seems to be a really uncommon baseball surname, doesn't it?
Estrada?
Is that Echeverria fellow still going around?
That's H.
Pretty sure it started with an E.
No. Oh, maybe. I don't know.
I can't think of any
I don't
E's
think
at all. I mean, not guys
Yeah,
that
I'm
you
struggling.
want on a all-star team.
Well, F is
Oh,
Freddie
what
Freeman.
about Xavier Edwards from the Fish? He's
Good
pretty
shout.
good. What's his numbers this year? He's got an OPS plus of 148. He's batting 337. We're going Xavier Edwards. Where does he play? Second base or shortstop? We happy with Edwards over Tommy Edman?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think
Idiot.
F
A lot
and
of
H
upside
are
26.
F is who?
Freddie,
Yeah.
and H is Harper.
Yeah, I think you're right. And G's Guerrero. Yeah.
Oh, gee. Now we have to place these all.
So we put Alvarez in left. We play Edman.
I think you go Acuna in center, and your outfielder becomes Acuna, Carroll, and Harper.
Yeah, move Carroll to left and play Harper in right where he used to play.
Yeah, and then put center field as Ronnie.
Let's do I first, because if we can think of any I, we're gonna have to probably like nail them down to their actual position, and then we can you think of any I's? Kyle Isbell.
Jose Iglesias.
It's probably got to be Kyle Isbell.
In the outfield.
Yeah, he's a center fielder. He's picked up half a WAR this year so far. That might be the best of the eyes. Are we missing anyone obvious?
I can only think of pitchers, and by pitchers I mean one.
So if Kyle Isbell has to be our center fielder,
Then you go
Then I think
Harper
you-
and Carroll.
yeah, and I think you're right. We might have to lose Jordan.
So who's playing in our infield?
Guerrero at first or Freeman at first. One of those two.
We're gonna have to put Devers back at third.
Oh,
We're
dear.
missing a shortstop or
Mookie.
a second baseman because we've got
Could
Xavier
we-
Edwards.
What about Mookie?
Could we put Gunnar Henderson in instead of Bryce Harper?
That would work better. We don't have Mookie because we needed Drake Baldwin as our catcher, and the step below him seems to be bigger than the gap would be from Mookie, 2026 Mookie to someone else.
Well,
I kind
who's
of
our
like
C?
Gunnar Henderson. He's having a better season than Harper as well.
Perfect. Who's our C?
Drake Baldwin.
No, who's our C? Like our C name.
Corbin Carroll.
Oh yeah, we don't want to lose him.
So we're going Kyle Isbell in center, Acuna left field, Corbin right field,
Yeah, that's stacked. That's pretty good.
and then Xavier Edwards at second base, Gunnar Henderson at shortstop, Freddie Freeman at first, or Vladdy at first. Who's better defensively?
Vladdy.
Then the other one, DH, and Rafi Devers at third. Pretty good.
So now I assume we can choose any starting pitcher that fits within this. A to I.
Let's find 3 starters and 2 relievers from A to E.
Hunter Brown.
We'll
Win
do the
Bell.
same with the other 2 parts of the alphabet. We'll just use the first 5 to build a mix of relievers and starting pitchers. Yeah, I like Brown.
Crochet.
Crochet. That's nasty.
Yeah, nice. One more starter, and then who are our relievers going to be?
Well, what
We've
about
got-
Garrett Cole? Or is he not healthy enough for the liking?
Probably go Crochet over
Dylan
Cole, right?
Cease? Can we throw Dylan Cease? Oh no, we've already got Crochet. But what
Yeah,
about Dylan
we've got
Cease?
we've got a B and a C. We need an A, D, and E for one starter and two relievers.
Nathan Evaldi?
We're going
he's a
to E
great
only.
shot.
Oh, we can't. Max Fried. Oh, we can't get to F.
We can't get to F.
I hate these rules. Can't believe we left out Junior Caminero and Pete Crow Armstrong out of our team, just quietly.
Pete Crow Armstrong's lucky to be in the Chicago Cubs team right now.
Pete Crow Armstrong might count as two because he's got two last names and they're both.
I mean, we could go Bryce Elder.
Jacob deGrom, potentially.
Bryce Elder has a 0.77 ERA.
Yeah.
I think he's the guy I threw
with
strays at earlier when I was reviewing the Braves. He's really come back to...
Not Chris Bassett.
Ashby from the Brewers is good.
What about closers? Diaz, is he our closer? Do we need to lock in our bullpen and then work back to starters? Like Edwin Diaz as our closer?
Diaz has to be the closer, right? I think I'm pretty set on Brown and Crochet being two of our starters and Diaz being our closer. So we just need an A and an E for a starter or a reliever.
Well, I mean, Evaldi makes sense at E, I think.
Or Sandy Alcantara at A, if we can find a good reliever for E.
Sandy at A would be nice, but I don't know what we got for E.
Well, it's not a pretty name, boys. It's not a sexy name by any mean, but Lucas Erceg and his 6.14 ERA somehow has 5 saves this year.
Hard pass.
Sorry, Lucas. So maybe it's got to be Evaldi, and we find a bullpen guy with A.
Brian Abreu?
I think he just got DFA'd.
Yeah.
Braxton Ashcraft. Is he a starter? Yeah, he's a starter.
Emmanuel Clase?
We could do well if he gets out of jail. He'll be in our old prison team.
The sinister laughter from Eric after suggesting that was my favorite part.
I mean, if we could find someone for B, I don't mind moving on Hunter Brown. If that
what about Chapman Araldis? That starts with A.
Well, we could take Crochet out if we can also find we could probably find a starter, right? Like we could go. Let's find the best pitcher that starts with E, nail them down because they're the hardest letter right now, and then fill the rest out with guys that are around a similar level. I don't really. I think we should go Evaldi as a starter. I think he's the best we're going to get for E, and then we can figure out the best mix of 2-2 for the others.
Well, what about Camilo Duval?
Yeah.
Well, we've
over Diaz.
No, probably not.
So if we assume the only two we've locked in are Diaz and Evaldi, we need 2 starters and one reliever with A, B, C. We could go Chapman, and then we've got to find A and B, but that could easily be Alcantara and Hunter Brown. Maybe that's the mix.
Well, we have Alcantara. David Bednar.
Juan Duran is probably somebody that we're forgetting about.
Yeah, he's probably been as good as, if not better than Diaz, to be honest. I think Diaz just went to the IL too. And we don't like Dodgers.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. What about Bednar and Duran?
Well, I've got Alcantara, Brown, Chapman, Duran, Evaldi. Can we beat that?
Alcantara, Brown.
I think it's
Chapman.
pretty nasty.
Duran, Evaldi.
I feel like we can improve our starters still.
But not without moving the E. I feel like Evaldi has to be locked in, right?
Yeah, and I mean, do you want to roll as Chapman or do you want Garrett Crochet? I guess is the question.
What about Eflin?
I think he's dead.
No, Zach Eflin's pitching. He's pitched this year.
Yeah, and I think he went to the IL.
Might have got hurt.
60-day IL.
Yeah.
I mean, Eflin's not better than Sandy or Hunter Brown anyway, right? So we're downgrading our starters if we put him in.
Well, I don't even know what relievers would be at E.
Yeah, Eflin had Tommy John.
I mean, for the sake of our listeners whose ears are probably bleeding at this point, we've put together a pretty good A through I team.
Yeah. Should I cap it off?
Roll it back to us.
All right. Alphabetical order, obviously, in theme of what we're doing here. We've got Acuna in left. We've got Drake Baldwin as our catcher. Corbin Carroll. Nice double C there in right field. Rafi Devers at third. We've got Xavier Edwards at second. Freddie Freeman's our DH. Gunnar Henderson is our shortstop. Vladdy Guerrero is our first base. And Kyle Isbell is our center fielder. Then for the pitching mix of 5, we've got Sandy Alcantara, Hunter Brown, Aroldis Chapman, Joan Duran, and Nathan Eovaldi. I really want people to let us know if we've missed some obvious I's, E's, and E's because they feel like the weakest by a fair margin. And B's.
I still feel like that's easily a 95-win team. We'd probably need some more starting pitching and some more relievers just, to be able to play 162 games of baseball, but I feel like that's a pretty damn good team.
And maybe a couple bench players, a pinch runner somewhere in there,
Like the fact that Ronnie Acuna hasn't made the team.
No, he's in left. Jordan Alvarez didn't make the team. And I'm very
Jordan didn't make the team. Clearly, I wasn't listening to you just now. I think that's outrageous too. But you're sort of hosed with having those two guys. Sure,
Ronnie's hurt though now.
Jordan's
guy can't stay healthy. What we'll do is we'll run that back. We will get prior to our next episode. We will essentially have the algorithm spit out what that team's projected record would be based on their WAR, and we can just assume replacement level starters at the 4 and 5 spots and replacement level relievers, and see what we think that team would do, and if our team next week can beat it. But I think that's a pretty good squad, boys.
I think it's good. I think the middle third of the alphabet's going to be nasty. I think it's going to be a lot easier. I think there's only one vowel to work with there. I think it's going to be really strong. And I think the back end of the alphabet's going to be brutal.
I can't wait for Riley O'Brien to be the setup man for Mason Miller when we build that team next week. Well, we will step aside. Eric has to go to the airport, if you can believe it. Both of these guys are at the Adelaide airport, I feel like, more than they're at their own home. But Eric's father is flying in from Guelph, and he's got to pick him up. So, Eric, we'll let you go. It's great to see your face, my friend. Look forward to doing it again later this week.
Gotcha, guys.
We will step aside, and on the other end, Spoon will give us some of his best plays for the midweek slate in Major League Baseball. Stay tuned. I will welcome you back into the Expats. Eric has left us to go pick up the old man from Adelaide International Airport. That's how big on the come-up Adelaide is. It's an international airport now in South Australia. Spoon knows it like the back of his hand, and another thing that he knows like the back of his hand is wagering on baseball games. And there's a lot of good series in the middle of the week this week. Probably none other more highly anticipated than Red Sox, Yankees, and Spoon. We're going there for your first tip for Wednesday, Australia time.
Yeah, some really good action tomorrow. I almost wish this was a Monday show like it used to be, because just quickly, again, on a Tuesday, like the perfect day 3 weeks ago and like last week, it's just been a very, very good day for those who follow on Twitter. Just the 4 plays today.
Do you feel like that's because it's the last game of a weekend series and you feel like you just get a better feel for it? Is that why you feel like you have more success on? Oh, no, but I guess your Monday picks are for Tuesday games that are the first game of the series of new series. You're saying it's more Monday U.S. time is when you have your best luck.
Monday U.S. time, yeah. I think it's that. I also think I very rarely bet on Mondays here in Australia because the games are 3 or 4 a.m. So unless I love something, I don't like to bet on things I can't watch because I can't see where it went wrong and all right, and adjust for next time. So I think it's a little bit of like take a step back, look at it through fresh eyes, and yeah, kicking off some new series is always fun as well, especially early in the season when these teams haven't met. But yeah, today we had Max Meyer 6 or more strikeouts against your Cardinals. He had 8. He was paying $2.30 for 6. Didn't touch his top-ups, unfortunately, just because it's the Cardinals. Then Bradish and Lugo, Orioles at Rangers, that crazy game I just talked about. 11 or more combo K at around even money, and then 14 or more at 5s, which got there as they both hit 7 each. I went back to the well on Aaron Nola, and I broke a rule, which I'll talk about in a second when I talk about that series for tomorrow. And Aaron Nola needed 6 strikeouts for me, and again, he got 5, like the tip last week. And brought it home with a Cease Detmers combo that flew home thanks to Dylan Cease having a dozen strikeouts again. So very good day, 3-1, 2 from 2 on top-ups. Stick around on Twitter. Self-plug there. On to the 2 for tomorrow. Yeah, I really like the matchup tomorrow for both the Red Sox and the Yankees pitchers. And they're not your big names compared to some of the guys in these rotations. We've got Luis Gil and we've got Connolly Early, who I really like. And he had a brilliant outing when he was thrown in the deep end last year in the playoffs against these Yankees, and had a lot of success against them. If you look at where these two teams are on the season, you've got them right next to each other. Boston are 21st in strikeout rate. The Yankees are 22nd. The combo market won't be out until tomorrow, but I've got a pretty good idea of where it's going to be because Luis Gil's over is just 4.5 and Connolly Early's is 5.5. So that's telling me you're going to be able to get plus money about 11 or more between those two guys. And I'm going to be taking that with some top-up sprinkled in there as well. So Luis Gil and Connolly Early, 11 or more combined strikeouts with a 2 in front of it. Sounds like a good way to kick off the midweek slate here in Oz.
Yeah, you're right. Not your typical sort of Yankees Red Sox matchup for, you know, the pitching combination to be beginning a series like that, but it definitely is an interesting one. So Gil and Early to combine for 11 for more. And as Spoon said, stay tuned to at Spoon Does Baseball on Twitter for the top ups and where he's getting his prices. Your second pick, the one that you like, another one that you like on Wednesday is two teams that played each other just last week and will not meet again after this series until potentially the playoffs. That is, if the Phillies stop dragging their feet. You want to have a look at the Phillies and Cubs series tomorrow.
Yeah, and I mentioned just earlier that I'm annoyed at myself for being dangled a carrot today by the name of Aaron Nola. And I set a rule about 3 or 4 years ago with baseball betting where I never take a starting pitcher's strikeouts over when he sees the same team twice in back-to-back starts. And that's what happened with Nola today. You look at all of baseball, you look at long series in the playoffs, you look at guys against their own division. The more experience and the more reps you have as a hitter against a pitcher, the more you can make adjustments. And watching the way the Cubs took on Nola today, they were spitting on a lot of stuff that last week they were swinging at. They ended up drawing more walks than Nola had given up in a start this year. And the second inning in particular dragged out to 35 pitches and basically put the dream of 6 strikeouts to bed. So broke a rule there, but something that some people might find interesting. And when they're doing their own sort of form, I very rarely, if ever, want to be in that situation. And when I combine that with the fact that this guy I'm about to talk about had an unbelievable outing last start, I'm actually going to play his unders tomorrow. And I'm talking about Shota Imanaga. He was phenomenal against these Phillies last week. He set a career high in swings and misses. He had 11 strikeouts. What often happens off the back of these strong performances is that the lines move up a little bit, particularly when it's against the same opponent. What you often see, though, is that it's very hard to catch lightning in a bottle twice to that degree. And I think the Phillies are going to be much better prepared tomorrow than they were today, than they were last week against Shota. They've put his lineup at 6.5, which I think is just too high. I'm invested heavily in him on a season level, and he's sort of well exceeding even my expectations for where he's at. I think he's got 23 or 27 strikeouts or something like that in 4 starts. He's been great. But 6.5 a line like that. I mean, we're seeing your Tarek Skubals and, you know, your Paul Skeens getting 6.5 lines. I can't have that for Shota. The Phillies are middle of the pack. They're 17th on strikeout rate. That doesn't make it a brilliant matchup or a poor matchup. It's just about fine. But it's just a bit too reactionary for me. And when you factor in the increased reps I was talking about, I think I got to go under for Shota 6.5 tomorrow.
Do you have a sort of nibble on Jesus Luzardo? I mean, we've talked about him ad nauseum on this podcast the last couple of years for better or for worse. I imagine some of the rough outings that he's had is probably conversely to Shota's, whereas the outings that he's had have probably brought that number up, 1.5 in terms of what those lines are. With Luzardo, I imagine it's probably come down. So is it one that you maybe look at taking unders for Shota and then potentially nibble at the overs for Luzardo in that game tomorrow?
Yeah, it's interesting you say that. Where they've gone with Luzardo is one of those ones where they adjust the line a bit, but then the pricing is so skewed as opposed to being a clear 190. So
Yeah.
Jesus Luzardo's strikeout line tomorrow is 5.5, which I've never seen from him. But you have to take $1.59 to get it. To your point, though, if you were to go Shota's under 6.5 into Luzardo's over 5.5, you're looking at 270. And that's with only one book available right now. When Ladbrokes and Neds put theirs up, I'm pretty confident you'll be able to get a 3 in front of that. So I think that's a really good top-up play, especially if you were to throw an alt or two in there for Luzardo as well. I mean, 7 for Luzardo and Shota to not get 7 is already $3.50. So if you're looking at, reversing the trend on last week, which I think is a great way to play in this situation, there's a lot of value to be had, but it's definitely for a lot of reasons a matchup I'm going to be watching closely tomorrow.
And just for those that, this is where it gets tricky, right? Because different books will have different numbers. But if that number was at 5.5 for Shota tomorrow, is it just a no play? Or are you looking to take him on again? Are you looking at maybe taking the overs if it's just under even money? Or are you just so sort of taken aback by what he's been able to do that you'd rather just sort of bet against him in a single game and just to see if he can do it again?
Yeah, I think if it was 5.5, I'd probably be more inclined to take something like the Phillies to win at $1.97, because you can kind of use the same logic here where, one was maybe too good to be true, one was too bad to be true. If the two get a bit closer to each other, last week it was like 15 combo K to even money. The way they've set these lines right now, it's going to be more like 13 tomorrow. So I think Phillies, they were put out of this one pretty early by the Cubs today because the Nola second inning that haunted me and haunted the Phillies, they are going to come good at some point soon. I'm pretty confident of that. So I think if you had to take too low and under on Shota, you're pretty much getting the same value for the same outcome by taking the Phillies to win.
So just to recap, it is heel and early, 11 or more in the Red Sox-Yankees Tuesday game in the United States. And Spoon is, he's betting against his man, Shota Imanaga, to have less than 6.5 strikeouts in the Cubs opener against the Phillies. Really good series elsewhere as well in baseball. Dodgers-Giants tends to lend itself to be a really big series. Not so much for the Dodgers, but certainly for the Giants. Obviously, LA will be looking to bounce back after 2 losses from the Rockies, of all people. But that's a really interesting pitching matchup. Yoshinobu Yamamoto goes against Landon Roop, who I think has been quite impressive. He's been a relative bright spot in what's been somewhat of an upsetting and down year early for San Francisco. So plenty of good series. Astros Guardians is a big one early as well, with the Astros sort of floundering and the Guardians just trying to keep pace in the AL Central. So really there's a lot of really, really good series midweek this week.
Yeah. And then we'll talk about this on Friday's episode, but the D-backs and the Padres played 2 games in Mexico this weekend, which has a much higher altitude than Coors. Keep an eye out for the run totals there, because if it's not like 12 or 13, it's going to be a really good opportunity, I think, to either bet the overs or look at some player props. So we can break that down on Friday.
Maybe it'll take us back to old times when the bookmakers had no idea what they were doing when they were setting run lines in Sacramento in 2025. Well, we hope that you enjoyed our episode and our first theme team of 2026. And our first theme team series that Spoon has given us. So stay tuned next week, where apparently we'll be doing the middle of the alphabet, the English alphabet. I hope we'll be in the middle of next week. But as always, enjoy your baseball this week, and we'll chat to you later in the week. Bye, everybody.